Welcome to the Equipcast for the Archdiocese of Omaha. Designed to help leaders to transform their cultures, to embody the pastoral vision, to be one church, encountering Jesus, equipping disciples, and living mercy. Welcome, everybody. My name is Jim Jansen. Welcome to the Equipcast. I am your host, and I am really excited to introduce you to our guest today, Mirna Chich-Price. Mirna, we met, and I think Deacon Gregorio Elizade introduced us, about a year, 2 years ago, maybe. We had some conversations, and we had a chance to work together for the Pastoral Conference. And that was so much fun. I thought, okay, we need to get together and have a longer conversation. Mirna, thanks for being with us today. How are you?
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Jim, for the invitation. I'm doing great, and I'm super blessed just to be able to be a part of this podcast. I'm excited, and I've been excited since the invitation. So thank you again for the invitation.
Well, so let's tell everybody what we're talking about today. So by way of introduction, again, we met, some of our listeners might recognize your voice from the Pastoral Conference 2021. But Mirna, you live in Norfolk, mom, wife, mother, bilingual, and you're a member of an ecclesial movement, which if that language sounds a little bit right, ecclesial is just a group of people in the church who feel drawn to a particular way of life and kind of a common gifting of the Spirit to be church together. I love these movements. I know almost all of our listeners are familiar with Father James Mallon from Divine Renovation. And he talks about, not many, I think, would know this, but when he talks about the work that he did in his parish and starting the Divine Renovation Network, what inspired him was the fruit and the life that he saw in these various movements in the church. In the English-speaking world, there's not as many. The Fellowship of Catholic University Students focus, CEC, which is actually originally, I think, a Latin American movement, Curcio, and here in the Archdiocese of Omaha is known as CEC. Communion and Liberation, again, originally Italian, but it has some momentum in the United States, and there's often a lot of English-speaking groups. There's a ton, though, of ecclesial communities in the Spanish-speaking world. So that's what we want to talk about today, because there is something incredibly beautiful, and in many ways, the making of disciples, or the intentional moments of what we would call a clear path of discipleship, show up in par excellence in these movements. So before we dive in, Mirna, tell everybody a little bit about your faith journey, like who you are, when you encountered Jesus.
Yeah. So first of all, just to kind of get started, I know you already said my name, but just wanted to share my full name is actually Mirna Chich-Price. But you can call me Mirna or Mirna. I will answer most of the time anyway.
And fun story, your mother shares the same name, right?
Yep. Her name
and you work at the same place.
Yep.
Okay. So one of you goes by Mirna and one of them goes by Mirna, right?
Yep.
Just to try and keep people from being confused. I love that. I think that's hilarious.
Yeah. And so actually, my parents are, they were born in Mexico. They are Mexican, and I was born in Texas, actually just like 5 minutes right across the border of Mexico. So I was born in the United States. However, I spent some time in Mexico with them when I was little. And in the Mexican tradition is always to baptize their children, even if they're not practicing Catholics. And and so I was baptized when I was little, just because of that Mexican tradition. But unfortunately, that was the only sacrament I ever received until I was in my adult life.
Wow.
Yeah. And so kind of just to tell you a little bit before my first encounter with Jesus, just wanted to share a little bit of kind of my story, where I was at that moment in my life, and kind of how it started since I was young. Just because I had that feeling of loss of sense of belonging, you could say, since I was growing up, because my parents were teaching me this Mexican culture. However, society, my community was teaching me an American culture. And so I was struggling between how like, who am I? How do I live my life?
Yeah.
And a quick example is Thanksgiving. So growing up, in school, they talk about Thanksgiving. And so we would have Thanksgiving offer, obviously here in the United States. And so my parents at first, they didn't really know what to do. So we would celebrate Thanksgiving by having a traditional Mexican food, something like pozole or menudo or something like that, tamales. So then I remember when I was maybe 13, 14, we actually had turkey for Thanksgiving. So, I mean, it just kind of, shares a little bit of how I wasn't learning really straight Mexican culture or an American culture, but a blended culture. And so a lot of the times I think we forget that there's that third culture that, individuals or young adults or the children of those Mexican immigrants that immigrate to the United States have, and so, or live. And I am the oldest of three, and I've always been this very shy, reserved person. So again, just kind of tells you a little bit about me, where I was at before. So at 23, I had struggled a lot in life. Like I said, just finding my own identity, and I was very reserved and very shy. And so it was very hard for me to ever get out of my comfort zone and ask questions. Like I rarely did that. I remember maybe a handful of times that I would leave my comfort zone and just ask any question. And so at 23, I had made some really bad decisions in my life that kind of just directed me to this moment where I was. And I was a single mom. I was a college dropout. I was really questioning my existence in life. Even though I had a daughter, and I just didn't know where I was going. And I remember I would question, what am I doing in life? What is my purpose? Why am I living? And to a really hard point in my life. And so there's a whole other story of how God was already working in my life for me to be able to accept this invitation that I was going to be receiving at 23. It's not a really long story, but I can share it some other time as well. However, I remember I was in the kitchen one day, and my mom, she just came up to me and she said, "Hey, I received this invitation to a retreat. I think you should go. I can take care of your daughter." She was 7 months. And she said, "Obviously I took care of you, and you turned out okay." So she said, "I will take care of her, and I think you should go." And so, like I said, there's a whole other story, but at that moment, I didn't even think about it. I didn't know where I was going. I wasn't Catholic. I didn't consider myself Catholic. I did not believe in God. Like I said, I was baptized very young age and never really assisted church other than maybe like the big events, like a wedding or a funeral or something like that. And so I said yes, and I didn't even know it was a Catholic retreat where I was going. But my mom invited me because she had received this invitation, and I really trusted her. And so I decided, and I went to this retreat of 3 days for Jovenes Para Cristo. It's Young Adults for Christ is the movement. And so I'm not going to say that in this retreat I encountered Christ, but in this retreat I was introduced to Christ, and it was through the people that were sharing their stories, their witness stories, and kind of, and then the way that the retreat is set up. And so I really was introduced to Christ, and most importantly to this community of individuals that seem to care about me. And also in that retreat, one thing I always remember is they talk about the sacraments. And one of the priests gave a talk on reconciliation. And after his talk, he did say, right now you have an opportunity to receive that sacrament. And if you're not Catholic, he said, we can have a conversation. No big deal. It's up to you. And so, like I said, I've always been this shy, reserved person. I did not know what reconciliation was. I did not know if I could go, and I was too embarrassed to ask. So I didn't even ask if I could. I just decided I was not allowed to receive confession or reconciliation. So I didn't. And so, but right after that retreat, I mean, I had that hunger, that desire in my heart of receiving or even knowing. So I remember I came out of that retreat and I went to my mom and I said, "Mom, do I have my sacraments? Like, am I allowed to go to confession?" And she's like, she says, no, you did not want to receive your sacrament. So you never did. You're only baptized. And so I was like, well, are my brothers? She's like, yes. And so I was really confused. Like,
Perfect.
why didn't you push me to go get my sacraments? But interesting enough, I mean, we all know that God works in amazing ways, and God had a perfect plan for me. And so actually the weekend right after the retreat, I was sitting in mass, and this guy at the end of the mass, like this, it was a Spanish mass. And so the guy that gets up and gives the announcements, which is, it turns out to be, he was Deacon Gregorio Elizalde, but he wasn't deacon back then, but he's giving the announcements. And he says, if you're an adult and you want to receive your sacraments, pick up a bulletin at the end of the mass, and there you'll find more information. And so I remember that day very clearly. I was standing up in that pew, and my heart was pounding, and I wanted to leave my chest, and I wanted to get that bulletin so that I could receive my sacraments. And yeah, that it was a very beautiful start of the faith for me. A very beautiful journey of just having, people there. And then with Jovenes, I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but with Jovenes, there's a second retreat as well. And actually in that retreat was where I first encountered Christ personally. And that was when I was committed, and I said, I want to walk with Jesus, and I want my life to be different, and I want to help others' lives be different. And so with ups and downs, but that was the retreat that really I had my first encounter with Jesus.
Wow. Myrna, I just my heart is full and my head is spinning. There's so many beautiful things in your story. I mean, I'm very moved as you talk about just your youth and the anecdote of like, so when I was 13, we decided, well, I don't know, let's try Turkey. It's just like, thank you for that. That is so illustrative, I think, of the challenge. I mean, I'm wondering if my immigrant German ancestors had a similar moment, obviously would have been a lot longer ago. And they're like, well, I don't know, can we have sauerkraut on Thanksgiving? Or, just like that. Yeah, that's really just a fantastic illustration. You talk about this beautiful retreat moment, right? Where you have this experience of a community that's welcoming you. You're feeling like you belong. You're hearing about the Lord. It clearly isn't like this conversion moment. And sometimes, language can be, sometimes I think we use the words encounter and we use it synonymous with conversion. But at least if I'm hearing you right, and I know my own story, the Lord showed up and I had all sorts of encounters, but it took a few before I was willing to say yes. And that actually an encounter became a conversion. Talk to us a little bit about that second retreat and what happened there.
Yeah. Yep. So like I said, my first retreat, my whole life, I did not pray to God. I did not, I shared this with one of the youth groups, retreats where I was sharing my witness story. And I said, sometimes people have bad days and they just say like, oh God, not again. And I would have a bad day and I wouldn't say, oh God, I did not believe in God at all. And, I would blame myself all the time. I would just say, oh, you're so stupid. It would always be just me in this world and in my own little mind. And so, this first retreat really just helped me to understand that there was something else, and that these individuals, like, they shared their stories and they were in a very bad place in their life and they had met Christ, and then their life had completely changed with still ups and downs, but it was different. And so I had that desire.
They weren't alone
yes.
anymore.
Yeah. I had that desire after that first retreat. And I know that part of God's plan in between the first and the second retreat was to use individuals in the community where I had already built that trust, and they intentionally invited me to different activities, to participate in a play, to participate in the choir, to participate in like a dance routine for like the festival. And so I think through those opportunities, I was able to stay and walk with them, even though I fully did not understand what was happening at that time. And so then when I was invited to the second retreat and I accepted the invitation, in this retreat, it was just more of, okay, Jesus, like, I believe in you. Like, I know you exist, but do you exist in my life? And so it was a lot of that in that second retreat, the praying, personal prayer, and then the communal prayer, where just guided prayer. And that was a lot of what was helping me in that retreat, was understanding where Jesus was in my own personal life, and then just being able to directly pray to him.
Yeah.
There's a couple of moments that I remember from that second retreat, but the one moment that I truly remember was in a talk, and I don't know what talk it was, but I know they had a time invitation for just prayer, and it was a guided prayer. And so in that moment, they were asking just, Holy Spirit, bring forth your the fruit, and bring forth like the charismas and everything to these individuals. And so through my head, a lot of the things that were going in that moment, or I was thinking in that moment, was I was 23. And so I was thinking there's a lot of young individuals that don't know Christ, that don't know that he exists. And I had this big desire of helping. So I would think of my friends, my college friends, my high school friends, and I would think of what we were doing every weekend and how our friendships were in those moments. And so I was just thinking, like, that's not what's going to fulfill our happiness. And so in that prayer, I started crying, and the only thing I could pray about was, God, please use me so that I can help in a way youth, and I can bring you to the community through my life, and through you doing things through me. And so, I vividly remember that moment, and I feel like that was really, like you said, like kind of like the conversion process where I was like, God, I'm ready and I'm here.
Yeah.
And so just help me.
Gosh, Mirna, that's so, as you share that story, I'm drawn back. There's a number of kind of commentators. Some are theologians, some are just, people on the ground who've recognized that there's this movement that people, right, who tend to be far away from God tend to go through. And there's this process of belonging, which leads to believing, which then leads to behaving. And they said that sometimes when the church gets interiorly focused, we confuse those and we get them out of order, right? And we say, well, if you believe what we believe and act like we act, then you can be a member of our community, right? And so we get it backwards. Like, we turn ourselves into a sorority where it's like, okay, if you behave like us and you believe like us, then you can be one of us. And the gospel and Christianity in the church, it goes the other way. You felt this belonging clearly before you totally believed, right? Or before your conversion was set. And even as you're experiencing this conversion, you're like, oh, wow, there's some parts of my life and my friends' lives that needs to be different. And it was right. It was your faith. Well, your sense of belonging, which gave space for your faith to grow. And it was that faith that then changed the way you were living and interacting with your friends, not the other way around. Mm-hmm. Gosh, it's so beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think sometimes we forget that it's all going to be through the Holy Spirit, and we want so much for an individual to experience or to believe. And sometimes we just have to just accept the individual, how they are in the stage that they are in their faith, and kind of just, first of all, have that relationship with them, and like I said, like, be non-judgmental and accept them how they are. And then slowly the Holy Spirit will work so that they can feel that, like you said, that through that process of first belonging and then their faith, and then they can do it themselves. They can act in something that they believe in.
Talk a little bit, like, how did that show up in your story? Like, I'm pretty sure you said, these invitations to help, invitations, like for the traditional dances. I'm assuming part of, right, like the interview process wasn't like a sobriety check and like, a morality checklist. It's like, well, if you want to dance with us, you need to, I mean, there were parts of your life that weren't conformed to Christ, and you were still being welcomed into this community, right? And I'm assuming that wasn't hidden. It's not like, probably wasn't public, but it's not like those parts of your life were probably a great secret.
Right. No. And so I think that was like I said, I think if it wasn't for those like invitations of just where I received that sense of belonging, if I would have not had those, I don't think honestly, if I would have continued in my faith and gone to that second retreat. And they accepted me how I was. And I felt like they just truly cared for me as a person. And they were just, I think there was a group of us that were kind of like the younger individuals that had lived this first retreat. And so a bunch of, we kind of walked together through these activities and through the process, I could say. But
well, I mean, it was a process, and we want to talk more about that. But now, in retrospect and having an opportunity to be a leader, you can see that there was an intentional effort on the part of the community to make space for you and these other friends to grow as disciples. But let's pick up where you left off. So after the second retreat, you're like, okay, Lord, yes, I want you to use me in the lives of my friends. What did he do with that yes?
Yeah. So I don't remember dates exactly, but I do know in our community in Norfolk, we had a sister, Hilda, I believe. She was new to the Spanish community. And so she would come and observe a lot of just kind of Spanish masses and different activities. And so she wanted to work with both the Anglo and the Hispanic in a way that I think she was really following the Holy Spirit. And so she started first called different individuals, and then we would have meetings. And then she kind of started these small ministries within the church. And so it wasn't a group, and she would call different people from different groups, and they didn't have to belong to a group. And so one of the groups the ministries that was created was the youth group or the youth ministry. And I don't remember exactly, but I think I was not even at the meeting, and they nominated me to be the coordinator for this youth ministry.
It's very easy to assume leadership when you're not there.
Right. And so then when I came back to the second meeting, they were like, oh yeah, you're part of this ministry. And so then we worked with, there was maybe 6-7 of us that, like I said, it was about the same individuals that we had been in this, these same like activities, like the dances, the play. And we kind of just worked to just gather with the youth. I remember we had like a bonfire night, we had a movie night. We would just hang out, and that we would have meetings. And that was the very first. So this was maybe a year and a half when I had after like Jovenes. And so I was learning a lot of like my leadership skills while I was on the job. And so, like even I remember, like, this is out of the topic, but even like leading a meeting, I remember. So I started my very first meeting, I would start and ask everybody, what do you think? Like, what are your opinions? And so I would just go around like the 6 of us, and we were, some would take more time than others. And so I remember, my husband, who back then he was not my husband, but we had met there. And so he was one of the ones that he said, if you continue doing that, we're going to be in this meeting for a very long time. And so he kind of, he organized it in a way. So it was just more like, how about, outline what is the first goal, the second goal. And so,
that's great.
I do remember working with youth, and unfortunately we did not continue when she left with those ministries, but we did. I learned a lot, and I'm sure God worked in the way that he wanted to work while those existed.
Yeah. He took you up on your yes. Right. And immediately through Sister Hilda, right? God bless her, took you up on that. Mirna, let's talk a little bit more about the movement itself, because I love these movements within the church. And I think, again, I'm with Father Mallon, that so often people have such a profound experience with the Lord and with the church that, sad to say, their experience with the Lord in these movements is so profound, and it's so contrary to their experience of the church in their parish community. I don't think the secret sauce and what's happening in these movements is only possible in that context. It'll look different, of course, in a parish context, but I think some of what happens in these movements can be translated into a parish community. So I want to kind of break it down a little bit. we've talked again before we kind of turn on the record button that there's these stages often marked by special moments in retreats where people can grow in these movements. Talk a little bit about how people are formed in the habits and knowledge of discipleship in the movements. Let's say someone freshly comes off of a retreat where they have given themselves to the Lord. What happens next? How do they grow as a disciple?
Yeah. So after the first retreat, everybody is invited back to this gathering. And of course, we have food and we hang out and there's music. And so basically, again, just kind of that opportunity of continuing on the relationship building. And so again, that allowing that sense of belonging for these individuals that just lived the retreat. So then right after the retreat as well, we have these strategically planned meetings. So we meet every Sunday after the retreat, and we share another talk. The individual that shares the talk obviously shares a witness story as well. The same thing that they lived in the retreat continues on a weekly basis. We always have worship music, and we most of the time have food. And so that, I think that just kind of, breaks the ice a little bit. It's just more of that casual, you're here to just listen and hang out. And so we do have that every week. And I think that's kind of that first opportunity for an individual to grow as a discipleship, is just that you are still it's a lot of the times, I know we have a really big experience like on a weekend, and then we go back to like our regular lives on a Monday, and then it's like you forget about that whole experience little by little.
It's such a different context, right? My Monday through Friday life and this retreat experience. Right.
And so we I guess I feel that the Sunday meetings, they help kind of to still feel that it's still there. And then I think that really helps. And then also, like I said, in Jovenes, for the first year, there's actually 4 retreats that the individual is invited to. And Jovenes is structured in a way that it's a 3-year formation, and each year has 4 different retreats. And so it just kind of goes up level by level. So I would say the first year is all about introduction to, so that you can have the opportunity to meet Jesus and then learn more theology and, just grow in that way and learning.
What does it mean to be a disciple?
Right. And so then the second year, you get placed in a ministry. So you're part of the team now, the leading team. And so you help plan that retreat for somebody else. And so you grow in that way as well. You might even be a leader of the ministry, whether it's like the kitchen team, the music team. And so you are now placed in that role of learning to be a leader, learning to be continuing in that discipleship growth. And so we, as well in Jovenes, we are very blessed, and there's let's see, I think there's 6-7 communities in the Archdiocese of Omaha. Like we have Omaha, Fremont, Schuyler, Sioux City, Columbus, West Point, Norfolk. And so sometimes we live these 2nd year, 3rd year retreats together. And so we get to meet, individuals that we would generally never meet if it wasn't for Jovenes. And so you feel like you belong to even a greater community with just different individuals of different towns. But in Norfolk, we're very blessed to have this our holy hour where we have exposition of the Blessed Sacrament, and we have a communal prayer as well every week. And then like there's that praise and worship music, and sometimes even thanks to the priests that they offer reconciliation as well every week during that holy hour. And so again, everybody is invited, and it's just kind of, we try to have that, like the invitation part of inviting them to the Sunday gathering, inviting them to the holy hour. That's just part of it's part of the package. And so that's the intentionality behind of inviting them to continue through their journey so that they can grow as that discipleship.
Yeah, I love that you said that, right? That's the kind of the intentional part, because earlier it caught my attention. You used the word like strategically placed, right, gatherings that are kind of following these Sunday gatherings that are following up. I think sometimes, and I want to just take a little tangent and speak to some of our listeners that feel a little bit of the scandal or the tension around balancing something that's natural, something that's based in relationships, that's, sometimes we use the word organic, but just something that it's just free, it's natural, it's, the Spirit's kind of leading it. Sometimes it feels like there's a tension between that and being strategic and being intentional. And I just love the way I think it's a false dichotomy, because the way you tell your story, it's perfectly natural, it's perfectly relational, it's led by the Spirit, but there's an intentionality and a strategic element where, it doesn't, right? Just as you share your own story, when the Lord moves powerfully on a weekend and Monday morning you wake up and you go back to the same job, we know that people who are fresh off an encounter or a moment of conversion need repetition, and they need to come back to those moments, to those messages, to that community, so that the grace that they're offered doesn't get stolen away by the enemy. And I just love the intentionality and the strategically placed moments that at the same time are just perfectly relational. So I love that. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, no, you're welcome. There's a difference between when you're that first year, you're the one that's invited to the retreat. And then now you're like the leader, and now you really know the formation, the retreats, and how it's set up, and there's a big difference there. And so obviously, I feel as humans, I think I did listen a little bit to the last podcast, but I know you guys talked a little bit about that as well, as far as that difference between how sometimes like it might feel like you're using someone because is it genuine, like genuine?
Yeah.
Is it really coming out as just like the Holy Spirit leading me, or is it something that I'm forcing? Or, I know that's a tough conversation to have. And I think as humans, it's going to be difficult for us. That's where we have to come out of our comfort zone, and
right.
That's what God is calling us to do. So sometimes it's not fake it until you make it type thing, but it's just really trusting the Lord that He is guiding you to do this, even if it doesn't feel right when you're doing it. Like if it might not feel normal, because it's like you're kind of creating a new habit in your life.
It's new.
And so I have an example of just recently when I invited an individual. So I work for Schwartz Farms in the Human Resources Department, and I work a lot with international recruitment. And so sometimes I'm the first point of contact for an individual coming from Mexico to the United States for the first time. So they come on a professional visa to work in the United States for some time. And so I get to meet them, right as soon as they land in the United States, and then kind of guide them through their community, show them around. And so, I built that trust without intentionally doing it. It's just, being me, and we talk on the way from Omaha to Lee or wherever they're going to be living. And we kind of share a lot of deep stories on the way. I never turn on the radio. I'm not a person that likes to listen to the radio anyway. And so I built a relationship with these individuals. And so there's a gal that we just kind of, continued our conversations. And I continued to invite her to just hang out, and I prayed a lot for her. Some of the things that she had shared when we first met, I really prayed for her. And so in my mind, sometimes I would feel, and I would pray about it. I would say, God, I really want to invite her to this retreat, but at the same time, I don't want her to feel, like I'm pushing something on her, or I'm just, it was just, it's a difficult situation sometimes in your own mind. But I remember, so we kind of built this friendship before the retreat. And so when I invited her to the retreat and she accepted, because I said, I can even pick you up, I'm going. And she had met my kids, my husband. And so she thought it was like a family event. She's like, when we got there, she's like, where's your kids? And I go, no, my kids aren't going to be here. But so, I mean, it was just very casual, and it was just like we're doing something together as friends. And on that Sunday, she was invited to just say something if she felt comfortable. And one of the things she said was, I'm so thankful that Mirna invited me to this retreat, because I've met amazing people here, and it's been an amazing weekend for her. And so there, I know I really felt in my heart, I said, it feels awkward. It feels awkward just intentionally growing that relationship and then inviting them to like a spiritual retreat. But after all, it's the Lord that works, and he did. And I mean, I think that's just an example of many things. And sometimes we don't find out at, that final, how God used us in that specific situation. I mean, I was so blessed to be able to hear that, because I thought I was kind of doubting, do I invite her? Is she ready? Am I ready? And so,
well, and what a gift. I mean, I love that you talked about like the battle is kind of in my head. Oh, is this too soon? Am I being pushy or whatever? And you were given this clear grace where, she's like, no, thank you. It was just the right time. Like, thank you for inviting me. And I think some of it is, I think we fall into this trap where we imagine we have to have our motives perfectly pure and our timing perfectly right in order to be used by God. And I think he's determined to purify us in our going, right? As we begin to step out and serve, he continues to purify us and guide us and synchronize our sense of timing with his sense of timing. But it's not like he gets us all perfectly set up and then he sends us out. He sends us out right away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
So Mirna, I want to give you a chance here. Any closing thoughts? And I'm thinking in particular for individuals who are listening to your story, they're like, God, I want that. I want to find a community that I can draw people into. I want to be a part of a community like that. I want to, I want to experience my faith this way. What would you say to someone who's feeling that?
Yeah, I think the main part, or the main thing that we would be focusing on, is just really first having our personal life with our Lord, of knowing what we're being called to. If we don't know our mission in life, we don't know our purpose in life, we're going to be very lost. And we're always going to wonder what are we supposed to be doing, or what is he calling us to do? When we realize that God really, I mean, he loves you. He loves us just the way that we are, with all of our flaws and all of our imperfections. And so to just try to accept individuals in their life, how they are currently, we all have different lives. And so kind of just being open to the Lord always, as well, and the Holy Spirit, and basically not overthinking. I think a lot of the times we overthink of, so what's the process, or what's the next step? And I don't know, I think I've shared in my own experience, is just a lot of community, a lot of just feeling like you have someone, feeling like you have a friend. And I think it comes down to that, that's what Jesus wants from us, is to see him as a friend, see him that he's there for us. And so that's what he wants within us, within the communities, is that to have each other, and really everything else just falls in place when we ask the Lord to work, like even praying together and the sharing a meal or talking about struggles in life. I think it all falls in place if we are just open to living the life that Jesus really wants us to live. And that's what I can share. And from my experience, I'm not an expert, but I can share that from my experience. It just really helps to just be open to work in the Holy Spirit. And I know now in this, I'm working in the formation team for Jovenes and the leadership team. And I think a lot of individuals even struggle with just sharing their own experiences, struggle with even just the nervousness of, I'm talking to someone that I never met, or how, that leaving their comfort zone, like doing something that they've never done before. And so sometimes even individuals that, I think back, and everybody has their own different experiences. Some have had like this strong encounter and then their life has changed. Others have been raised Catholic their whole life, and then they have this process of conversion. And so it's just, even if somebody that has known the Lord their whole life, they still struggle through, there's that point where we're all going to struggle, where I'm going to have to do something different, and I'm going to have to let go. I'm going to have to trust in the Lord to help me do, direct me in the way that he wants us to work. And so I think, it's just a lot of building trust with Jesus and being open to him.
Yeah. Thank you, Mirna. I love that. Right. I mean, let the Lord be the friend he wants to be, and let him provide a community. And sometimes letting him provide a community means a little bit of that going outside of our comfort zones and drawing other people to ourselves around a question. Again, I love these movements, because there's just gatherings of individuals who love the Lord, who feel a call to mission to others. And there's just some clarity, right? Like, people in the movement, they know where and how these places, these retreats, where people are going to experience conversion. They know where people are going to be built up in their faith, where they're going to be called and equipped for leadership. They know how new people enter. It's such a beautiful, again, the intentionality and the community, such a beautiful thing. I feel like we could talk all day. So maybe we'll have to do a part 2 here, because I really appreciate your story.
No, thank you. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And I really hope that God is working in hearts of the listeners. And thank you.
So everybody, if this has been a blessing for you, you know how to do this, right? Share this out, take a moment, hit pause on your phone, whether you're using, Apple or Android, share this out on whatever your preferred podcasting platform is, but share this out to some friends who need that encouragement. And thanks for listening, Mirna. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thank you.